The lamp in Mandisa's hand trembled, barely holding back the darkness. Thabo's face was tight, almost squeezed, as he turned to her. "Follow me," he said, his voice low and sharp. "You must see something." Mandisa's heart raced. Fear clawed at her chest. She hesitated, but Thabo didn't wait. He walked ahead, majestic and unbothered by her terror, his every step echoing in the silent village. A lone bird flapped overhead, casting fleeting shadows on the cracked walls and broken paths, as if the night itself was warning her. She followed, each step heavier than the last, her voice caught in her throat. And when she finally pleaded, begging him to help her, Thabo turned and walked away, leaving her alone. "Neighbours, please help me," she screamed. But no one answered. What exactly did Thabo want her to see? Sit back as we dive into this shocking story. Mandisa was once a woman who knew what happiness felt like. She remembered the early days when Thabo would come home with a smile, when his hands were gentle, when his promises felt like solid ground beneath her feet. They were poor, yes, but they had each other. Or so she thought. But poverty has a way of revealing what lies beneath a person's surface. When Thabo's small business collapsed, when the rains failed and the harvest died, when creditors began knocking on their door with angry voices and harder fists, something inside Thabo changed. His eyes became distant. His words became few. His presence became a shadow that moved through their home, but no longer lived there. And then one morning, he was gone. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. Mandisa woke up to an empty bed and a silent house, with only her small daughter, Thandiwe, crying softly in the corner, as if even the child could sense that something fundamental had broken. The months that followed were the hardest of Mandisa's life. She scraped together what little she could, washing clothes for neighbours, selling vegetables at the market, accepting charity from those who pitied her. Her sister Nomsa came by often, bringing food, bringing strength, bringing the kind of fierce love that only a sister can offer. "He will come back," Nomsa would say, her jaw set with determination. "And when he does, he will answer for what he's done to you." But Mandisa had stopped waiting for Thabo. She had stopped hoping. She had learned to survive without him, to build a life from the ruins he'd left behind. Her love for him had slowly transformed into something else. Anger, yes, but also a deep, aching question. Why? Why did he leave? Where did he go? And most importantly, who was the man she thought she knew? 6 months later, Thabo appeared. Mandisa saw him standing at the edge of their compound, his silhouette dark against the setting sun. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, or perhaps having a nightmare. But no, it was him. Thinner than before, harder. His clothes were clean but worn, his face unreadable. He didn't run to her. He didn't apologize. He simply stood there, watching her with eyes that seemed to look through her rather than at her. "Thabo," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He walked closer, slowly, as if approaching a stranger. "Mandisa," he said. "Just her name. Nothing more. Where have you been?" The question erupted from her chest, carrying months of pain, anger, and sleepless nights. "Where did you go? Do you know what you left behind? Do you know what I've been through?" Thabo's jaw tightened. I'm here now." "That's not an answer." Mandisa's voice rose, tears burning her eyes. "You disappeared. You left me alone with our child. I thought you were dead. I mourned you." "I had things to take care of," he said flatly. "What things? What could possibly be more important than your family?" But Thabo didn't answer. Instead, he looked past her, toward their small house, and something flickered in his expression, something that made Mandisa's skin crawl. "I need you to trust me," he said quietly. "Just one more time." Mandisa laughed bitterly. "Trust you? After everything?" "Tomorrow night," Thabo continued, as if she hadn't spoken, "I need you to come with me. There's something you must see, something that will explain everything." And despite every instinct screaming at her to refuse, despite the warning bells ringing in her mind, Mandisa found herself agreeing. Because after 6 months of questions, she desperately needed answers. Even if those answers terrified her, while Mandisa wrestled with Thabo's sudden return, others in the village were watching closely. Nomsa, Mandisa's younger sister, had always been the brave one, the one who spoke when others stayed silent, who fought when others accepted their fate. When she heard that Thabo had returned, her reaction was immediate and fierce. "You cannot trust him," she told Mandisa, gripping her sister's hands tightly. "A man who leaves without a word does not return with good intentions." "I need to know why," Mandisa replied quietly. "I need to understand." "Some answers are not worth the price you pay for them," Nomsa warned, but she knew her sister well enough to recognize the determination in her eyes. "Then I'm coming with you." "No," Mandisa said firmly. "If something happens to me, Thandiwe needs you." Nomsa's face darkened with worry, but she understood. Still, she made a silent vow to herself. She would watch. She would wait. And if her sister didn't return by midnight, she would come looking. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, Sifo, a quiet boy of 14, sat on the edge of his family's compound, his mind troubled. For weeks, he had been seeing strange things, shadows moving in the abandoned part of the village where no one went anymore, figures meeting in the dead of night, whispered conversations that stopped whenever someone approached. And at the center of it all was Thabo. Sifo had watched him night after night, walking toward the old abandoned village with a purposeful stride. He'd seen other people there too, including an old woman whose face he couldn't quite make out in the darkness. He'd wanted to tell someone, to warn them, but fear kept his mouth shut. Who would believe a boy? And what if speaking out put him in danger? But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, the air itself seemed heavy with warning. And when Sifo saw Mandisa walking toward the edge of the village with a trembling lamp in her hand, following Thabo into the darkness, he knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. The walk to the abandoned village felt endless. Thabo moved ahead of Mandisa with confident steps, never looking back to see if she was following. The lamp in her hand cast weak, dancing shadows on the narrow path. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, every distant sound made her heart jump. "Thabo!" she called out, her voice breaking. "Where are we going?" "You'll see soon enough," he replied without turning. "Why can't you just tell me? Why all this secrecy?" He stopped abruptly, and Mandisa nearly collided with his back. When he turned to face her, His expression was unreadable in the dim light. "Because," he said slowly, "some things cannot be explained with words alone. They must be seen, witnessed." "You're scaring me," Mandisa whispered. For just a moment, one brief, flickering moment, something soft passed across Thabo's face. Regret? Sadness? But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Come," he said. And he continued walking. They entered the abandoned village, a cluster of old huts that had been left to decay after a sickness swept through years ago. Most people avoided this place, believing it was cursed. The air here felt different, heavier, as if the very atmosphere held memories of pain. Thabo stopped in front of one particular hut, its door hanging crooked on broken hinges. "In there," he said, pointing. Mandisa looked at the dark doorway and felt every muscle in her body tense with resistance. What's inside? The truth? "Thabo, please." But he was already walking away. Mandisa's panic surged. "Where are you going? You said you'd explain." Thabo paused, but didn't turn around. "I brought you here. That's all I could do. The rest is out of my hands now." "Thabo!" Mandisa's voice cracked with desperation. "Please help me." But he kept walking, his figure disappearing into the shadows between the huts. Mandisa stood frozen, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She wanted to run, to flee back to her house, to her child, to safety. But something held her there, that burning need to understand, to finally have answers after months of questions. She turned to the hut and called out, "Neighbours, please help me." But her voice echoed uselessly in the empty village. No one answered. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pushed open the crooked door and stepped inside. The interior of the hut was dim, lit only by her lamp and thin streams of moonlight filtering through cracks in the walls. At first, Mandisa saw nothing unusual, just an abandoned space filled with dust and decay. But then her eyes adjusted, and she noticed items scattered deliberately on the dirt floor. Old baby clothes, carefully folded, dried herbs tied with twine, strange symbols drawn in white chalk on the ground, and, in the centre of it all, a small wooden box tied with red thread. Mandisa's hands shook as she knelt down, her lamp casting wavering light over the objects. The baby clothes looked familiar, too familiar. With growing horror, she recognized the pattern, the small tear on the sleeve that she had meant to mend but never did. These were Thandewee's clothes, the ones that had gone missing months ago. Her breath caught in her throat. What were her daughter's clothes doing here? "You've finally come." Mandisa screamed and spun around. An old woman stood in the shadows, Nokuthula, bent with age, but with eyes that gleamed with terrible knowledge. "Who are you?" Mandisa gasped, backing away. "What is this place?" "You know who I am, child," Nukutula said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "Everyone in the surrounding villages knows of me. I am the one people come to when they have nowhere else to turn, when they need solutions to impossible problems." "I don't understand." "Thabo does," Nokutula interrupted. "He understands very well. He's been coming here for months, long before he disappeared from your life, long before he returned." Mandisa's mind reeled. "What are you talking about?" The old woman moved closer, her footsteps silent. When a man is desperate, when everything he built is crumbling, when he faces ruin and shame, he makes promises, dangerous promises. What kind of promises? Mandisa whispered, though part of her didn't want to know. Nokutula's eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity, the kind that require payment, the kind that demand something precious, something from his own blood. The words hung in the air like poison. Mandisa's gaze dropped to the wooden box on the floor. With shaking hands, she picked it up and untied the red thread. Inside, she found a small piece of paper, folded carefully. She unfolded it and gasped. Written in Thabo's handwriting was a single name, Thandiwe. Her daughter's name? No, Mandisa breathed. No, no, no. He promised you would come, Nokutula continued relentlessly. He promised that when the time was right, he would bring you here to complete what was started. Complete what? Mandisa's voice rose to a scream. What are you talking about? Where is my husband? Your husband? Nokutula laughed a dry, bitter sound. That man ceased being your husband the moment he walked through my door and made his bargain. He chose his own survival over your family. He agreed to the terms. And tonight was meant to be the final payment. Mandisa's legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees. The lamp fell from her hand, its flame flickering wildly. He brought me here to hurt me, to hurt Thandiwe? He brought you here because the promise demanded it, Nokutula said. But don't worry, child. Your daughter is safe at home. It was never her I needed. It was you. Terror flooded through Mandisa's body. She tried to stand, to run, but Nokutula moved with surprising speed, blocking the doorway. You cannot leave yet, the old woman said. Not until we finish this. Back in the main village, Nomsa paced anxiously outside her sister's house. She had watched Mandisa leave with Thabo hours ago, and her gut had been churning with worry ever since. Little Thandiwe was asleep inside, safe with a neighbour, but Mandisa should have returned by now. The moon was high, and the night was deep, and something felt terribly wrong. Nomsa made a decision. She grabbed a torch and went from house to house, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen where Thabo took her sister. Most people shut their doors quickly, unwilling to get involved. But one woman, an elder named Masibia, grabbed Nomsa's arm and pulled her close. The abandoned village, she whispered urgently. I saw them walking toward the abandoned village. But child, you must be careful. Others have gone there before and not returned the same. What do you mean? Nomsa demanded. Masibia's face was grave. There was another woman, months ago. She followed a man there, and when she came back, she was broken. Her mind was shattered. She speaks to no one now, just sits and stares at nothing. They say she saw something she should never have seen. Nomsa's blood ran cold. I have to find my sister. Then take others with you, Masibia urged. Don't go alone. Nomsa nodded and began gathering anyone who would listen. But in the middle of her search, a young boy came running up to her Sifo, out of breath and terrified. I know where she is, he gasped. I've been watching. I've seen what's happening there. Please, we have to help her. Tell me everything, Nomsa said, gripping his shoulders. And Saipho told her about the secret meetings, about Thabo's late-night visits to the old huts, about the strange woman who lived there and the dark rituals he'd glimpsed through cracked walls. His words poured out in a rush, everything he'd been too afraid to say before. Nomsa's face hardened with fury and determination. She gathered 3 strong men from the village, and together with Sifo leading the way, they marched toward the abandoned village with torches blazing. Inside the hut, Mandisa faced Nokutula with a courage born of sheer desperation. "What did Thabo promise you?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "What was worth destroying his family?" Nokutula circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "He came to me when his business failed, when creditors threatened to take everything, when shame and poverty drove him to the edge of madness. He wanted wealth, success, respect. And I told him what it would cost. And he agreed?" Mandisa's voice broke. "He hesitated," Nokutula admitted. "For a moment he hesitated. But fear is a powerful motivator, child, and pride even more so. He couldn't bear to be seen as a failure. So he made the promise. Wealth and success in exchange for a blood sacrifice from his own family when the time came. "You're evil," Mandisa whispered. "I am what people make me," Nokutula replied. "I offer solutions. They choose whether to accept them. Thabo chose. And what about me? What about my choice? You have none," Nokutula said simply. "The bargain was made. The payment is due." Mandisa's mind raced. She thought of her daughter sleeping safely at home. She thought of all the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, wondering where Thabo had gone. She thought of the man she'd loved and the stranger who had returned. And something inside her snapped. "No," she said firmly, rising to her feet. "I reject this. Whatever dark promise Thabo made, it was his to make, not mine. You have no claim on me or my child." Nokutula's eyes flashed dangerously. "You think you can simply refuse? You think it's that easy?" "I think," Mandisa said, her voice growing stronger, "that I am not the same woman Thabo left behind. I survived without him. I built a life from nothing. I learned what I'm made of, and I will not be a victim of his cowardice." Before Nokutula could respond, a voice rang out from outside the hut. "Mandisa." It was Nomsa. Mandisa's heart soared with hope. "I'm here! Help me!" The door burst open, and Nomsa rushed in, followed by Sifo and the village men, their torches flooding the hut with light. Nokutula hissed and backed into the shadows, but there was nowhere to hide. "What is happening here?" Nomsa demanded, moving immediately to shield her sister. And then another figure appeared in the doorway, Thabo, drawn back by the commotion, his face a mask of anguish and guilt. "Tell them!" Mandisa screamed at him. "Tell them what you did! Tell them what you promised!" Thabo stood in the doorway, his shoulders slumped, his eyes unable to meet anyone's gaze. "Tell them!" Mandisa repeated, her voice shaking with rage and pain. "Tell them how you tried to trade your family for success. Tell them how you brought me here to complete some evil bargain." The men from the village moved closer, their faces hardening as they began to understand. "Is this true?" one of them demanded. "Thabo, speak!" And finally, Thabo broke. His knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground, his hands covering his face as sobs racked his body. I was desperate, he choked out. Everything was falling apart. I was losing everything. I couldn't provide for my family. I couldn't face the shame. And she, he pointed at Nukutula, she promised me a way out. She said if I made the sacrifice, everything would be restored. Wealth, success, respect, everything I'd lost. What sacrifice? Nomsa asked coldly, though she already knew. My family, Thabo whispered. She said I had to bring Mandisa here when the moon was full, that the ritual required someone from my own blood. I agreed. I was so afraid, so ashamed. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted a solution. You wanted a solution, Mandisa repeated, her voice hollow. So you decided to sacrifice your wife. I thought if I just did what she said, everything would be fine again. I didn't think about what it really meant. I didn't think about you, about what I was doing to you. You never thought about me, Mandisa said quietly. Not when you left, not when you came back, not when you led me here. You only ever thought about yourself. Thabo looked up at her, his face streaked with tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was a coward. Please, Mandisa, please forgive me. Forgive you? Mandisa's voice rose to a scream. You tried to kill me. You made a deal with darkness and offered me as payment. What kind of man does that? What kind of husband? What kind of father? She couldn't finish. Her whole body trembled with fury and heartbreak. Nukutula watched from the shadows, her expression unreadable. The bargain was made, she said quietly. A promise broken has its own consequences, Thabo. You will pay one way or another. Take me instead, Thabo said desperately. Let Mandisa go. I'll pay whatever price you demand. Just let her go. It doesn't work that way, Nukuthala replied. The terms were specific, and now that the whole village knows, the ritual is broken anyway. You failed in every possible way. One of the village men stepped forward. This woman, he said, pointing at Nukuthala, she needs to answer for what she's done. How many others has she harmed? How many desperate people has she exploited? But when they turned to grab her, Nukuthala was already moving toward the back of the hut. She slipped through a gap in the wall with surprising agility and disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the smell of dried herbs and decay. Let her go, Nomsa said. She's not worth chasing. But him. She turned to Thabo with eyes full of contempt. He needs to face what he's done. The village elders were called to judgment the next morning. Thabo sat in the centre of a circle of community members, his head bowed as person after person spoke about what had happened. Saifo testified about what he'd seen. Mandisa told her story, her voice strong despite the tears that fell. Even Masibia spoke, telling of the other woman who had been damaged by whatever dark dealings happened in that abandoned hut. The elders' decision was swift and unanimous. Thabo would be banished from the village. His property would be given to Mandisa to do with as she pleased. He would leave with nothing but the shame of his actions. You traded your family for empty promises, the head elder said, his voice heavy with disappointment. You allied yourself with darkness instead of facing your struggles with honour. You are no longer welcome among us. Thabo didn't protest. He didn't beg. He simply nodded, accepting his fate. Before he left, he approached Mandisa one final time. She stood with Nomsa beside her, little Thandiwe held safely in her sister's arms. "I don't expect forgiveness," Thabo said quietly. "I don't deserve it, but I want you to know what I did was unforgivable, but it was never because I didn't love you. It was because I was weak, and my weakness almost destroyed you." Mandisa looked at him for a long moment. This man who had been her husband, her partner, the father of her child, this stranger who had betrayed her in the worst possible way. "You're right," she said finally. "You were weak. And your weakness did destroy us, not almost, but completely. The marriage we had is dead. The trust is gone. The love is gone. All that's left is the lesson." "What lesson?" Thabo asked. "That I never needed you to survive," Mandisa replied. "That I am stronger than I ever knew, and that my daughter deserves better than a father who would trade her mother for money and status." Thabo flinched as if struck, but he nodded. "She does. You both do." He turned and walked away, his figure growing smaller and smaller until it disappeared beyond the village boundaries. Mandisa watched him go without tears. She had no tears left for him. In the days that followed, the village buzzed with talk of what had happened. The abandoned huts were burned to the ground, the ashes scattered to prevent anyone else from being tempted by whatever darkness had lived there. No Kuthula was never seen again. Some said she moved to another village to continue her dark work. Others believed she had simply disappeared, as such people often do when their secrets are exposed. Mandisa returned to her life, but everything had changed. She was no longer the quiet, uncertain woman who had been abandoned and left to struggle alone. She had faced true darkness and emerged stronger. Her neighbours looked at her differently now, with respect, with admiration, with a kind of awe. Here was a woman who had been led to the edge of destruction by the man she trusted most, and who had refused to be destroyed. Nomsa stayed close, as she always had, but now there was a new understanding between the sisters. They had faced evil together and won. Their bond was unbreakable. Sifo, the young boy who had found his courage and spoken up when it mattered most, was honoured by the elders. His bravery had saved a life. The village made sure he knew that speaking truth, even when afraid, was the mark of true manhood. And little Thandiwe grew up knowing her mother's story, not all of it, not while she was young, but enough to understand that her mother was strong, brave, and worthy of respect. This story carries truths that echo through many lives. Remember, no matter how broken your past is, you still deserve peace, love, and a safe home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. We bring you real-life stories of struggle, survival, and triumph that will inspire you, move you, and remind you of the strength within you. Coming up next, we have another incredible story that will leave you speechless. You won't want to miss it. Like this video, drop a comment below and tell us what moment in Mandisa's story resonated with you the most. Was it when she discovered Thabo's dark betrayal? When Nomsa refused to abandon her sister? When young Sifo found the courage to speak up? Or when Mandisa chose to stand for herself instead of accepting her fate? Have you or someone you know ever been betrayed by the person who was supposed to protect you? Share your thoughts. We read every single comment. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and your story matters. See you in the next video. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next video. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.